Dc20, Dwerno and his wordless pearl. Soul-touching and life-enhancing stories. Dwerno and his wordless pearl. Dwerno, the youngest son of Tailor Fahad, after he had reached the age of 7, had strangely changed overnight, from having been a very easy child into a very difficult one. After that time, Dwerno had no respect for anything anymore. He was seldom nice to his parents and always argued and fought with his brothers and sisters. Although everybody tried to be friendly and kind to him, it seemed to be a waste of time and energy. Dwerno didn't make it easy for anyone. The little old house was standing near the green lake, which permeated their home more and more with the bad-smelling fumes. The green lake had slowly started changing into a swamp area, slowly creeping up to their house. Living in their house was gradually becoming unbearable. Closer to the mountain one could see the springs spitting out boiling green poisons from far beneath the earth. It was a real strange area to live, and you may wonder why anyone would choose this place to live in. But it had not always been this way. Years before, Dwerno's father had chosen this place to build their house, as it was a beautiful and healthy place to live in. It provided space for the children to play safely, it was good soil to plant in, and gave them seclusion from the everyday hustle and bustle of village life. Then there had not been no dangerous swamps, and the springs still provided refreshing clean water. Life had been easier then. Dwerno had also been easier to handle, as his mind had been clearer and his attitude brighter. But it seemed that evil itself had come to live in this place that once was so nice, and with such a nice child. Dwerno seemingly enjoyed this, as slowly all the beauty, scenery and animals had disappeared. He enjoyed trapping and killing animals, and now strange reptiles had become his pets. These pets had created such a big to-do in the house, scaring his mother and sisters, and his father had insisted that they had to be removed from the house. He provided building materials for Dwerno so he could find a better location for his pets right outside the house. Dwerno was sour because he always wanted to have his way, and out of rebellion he had started many forest fires, and his family living in constant fear. Also, things had gotten stolen from their home, and expensive materials his father would work with were found damaged. No one suspected that Dwerno knew something about the fires and thefts. His parents were concerned, of course, and in the evening when the children were put to sleep and all the chores were done, they would discuss family matters. During these hours it was mostly Dwerno that was discussed. His father was convinced that once he gave him more attention, the rebellious phase would pass. His father had to work hard because he had to provide for a large family, and he felt extra empathy for his youngest son, who seemed to be going through such a painful change. Many hours he had to work overtime, and with the extra money he bought Dwerno little presents, trying to make him feel special. Sorry to say, in Dwerno's hands the presents didn't last long. He would break them, leave them outside, or simply say that he did not fancy that particular toy and disregarded it. Despite his mother's advice, his father continued buying gifts, which became more and more expensive. No one in the family could really understand why Dwerno and their surroundings had changed so much. But Dwerno knew better, that this had been his work under the evil guidance of the Red Cape, who Dwerno had met shortly before he had turned 7 years of age. Together, they had slowly changed the forest area into a living hell. Dwerno had met the Red Cape by the lake, and they had become friends, and he had to follow the orders of the Red Cape from that day on. The Red Cape had tricked Dwerno by promising him the most valuable pearl in the world, a pearl as large as 2 fists. The Red Cape had said that this pearl would make him the richest child in the world, and he would receive this pearl when he listened and followed instructions. Every month they had met, and in the beginning Dwerno felt uneasy and did not care too much to listen to the Red Cape, but the idea of getting this pearl kept him coming back to their meetings. The more they met, and the more bad things Dwerno had done, the more pleased the Red Cape became, and the better they understood each other. Don't be nice to your family. You can look out for yourself. Remember that when you receive this pearl, which is very valuable, they would want you to share that, or even worse, they would want it for themselves. He made Dwerno prove that he was not afraid of his friends, peers, animals, and nature, and turned him into a nasty kid, setting fire to the woods, trapping animals, and upsetting his surroundings. Every month, Dwerno asked for his pearl, but each time he got new instructions, more nasty tricks to play, more surroundings to upset. Many things happened in these following years, which we better do not talk about, as they would make you sad to the bones. Dwerno had almost become as evil as the Red Cape himself. His family tried to avoid as much as possible having contact with him, as it left them scared and drained. Then finally, after many years, he received his pearl. He was told, "I am very proud of you. You have shown that you are not afraid of anything. You do not need them. You deserve this, for you worked hard for this pearl. It will give you all the power and the wealth of the world. You will be satisfied for the rest of your life. And as a second present, I give you a red cape. Wear it with the same vigor you have seen me portray." Dwerno was now a teenager, 15 years old. 15 years old with a pearl as big as a grown-up's fist. He sat looking at his hands, holding this beautiful pearl, and thought, "What will be my next step? If I go home, my parents will ask me where I got it from, and it is not their business. Red Cape was right," he thought. "People will want part of my riches. Maybe I will sell this pearl and travel around the world till my time has come to settle down." He smiled and thought, "I will never have to work any more. I will enjoy all the worldly pleasures." He hid the pearl and went home. At the time he was thinking how he would tell his parents that he wanted to leave home. Because of the changes that took place in him, he was not capable and honest enough to tell his parents. His behavior became so unbearable because he felt trapped. His mother cried day and night. Finally, his father could not see the destruction any longer and set Dwerno down. "Son, I love you very much. I have allowed you too many liberties, as I thought it was a difficult phase you are going through. Now, however, I can see that you have no love for your family and probably not even for yourself. It hurts me to tell you this, but it is for the best of the family's sake. You need to leave this home. Leave this area. Come back any time you want when things have changed. Remember, we need you to be part of the family, to build it up, not to destroy it. Dwerno jumped up. Fine, that is what I wanted anyway. But my son, that would have been so easy to do. I would have given you permission and blessing. Shrugging his shoulders, he got to his feet, grabbed his knapsack, some provisions, and left his parents' home without a goodbye. He did not go to the nearest village, but went several miles away and tried to sell his pearl. That town, however, was less rich than the one he came from, and after several days of walking, he found out that unfortunately nobody in his country could afford such an expensive pearl. So off he went to visit another country. For weeks he walked over hills and mountains, bare lands, around lakes, making nature his home. Finally he reached the next country. But in that country nobody needed the pearl, because everybody had their pearl by themselves. They had each one of their own. He did not want to go back. Going back would mean defeat, and so he kept traveling. To his great disappointment, even in the next 5 countries he visited, the situation was so that there was either no interest or no money to pay for such a pearl. In one of these places he had even to fight and run away to save his life and his pearl from robbers who had set out to get it. Then arriving in the next country, everybody was buzzing about this person dressed in rags with a beautiful red cape and a very big pearl. Months passed by. Dwerno had become exhausted, weak and sick of the whole situation, and nobody wanted to have anything to do with a person wearing a red cape. He did not look like a beggar or a wanderer, he just looked scary. Dwerno was desperate and looked for a place in the mountains to rest and considering his dilemma. He discovered a cave and gathered some wood for a little fire. He had to dig up some roots and ate them raw. After his dinner he sat down and held the pearl in his hands, with fingers ugly, shaky and old. He studied both, the pearl and his hands, for a long time. The pearl had not changed. His hands, his body, and his mind had changed. He felt stupid, and was thinking, almost 2 years have passed, and what have I accomplished? I have no place to call home. I lost my friends, my family, because what I did to them, and our surroundings. I have this pearl, but I do not know what to do with it. Nobody wants it or can afford it. I cannot keep traveling, for I know that this is a lost cause, trying to sell this pearl. How can I ever change all the wrong and evil I have caused? A lonely tear rolled down his face. His throat felt swollen, and little sounds would come out every time he exhaled. And since it was a long time since he had cried, and he had had such an honest conversation with himself, one tear followed, and finally the tears kept flowing. He felt lonely and sad. At that moment a tall man entered the cave. It was as if he was surrounded by a white cloud, in which you could see crystals, flickering stars, and suns and moons. And he said, "My child, it is never too late to change your life. You are not the only person in the world who lives under the evil power of the red cape. Most people are searching for some kind of pearl, and they too will get to the point, hopefully, to appreciate the world they live in. Return to your family, where you are always welcome, and start a new life. Forget the past, and become kind again to your fellow man and everything else around you. The rewards will automatically come, and faster than you even expect." The man turned around before Dwerno could recover from his astonishment and couldn't ask any question at all. Slowly the man walked towards the entrance of the cave, but even before he got there he had disappeared in his own white cloud. Dwerno kept on staring where the tall man had disappeared, but after quite a while he got up, threw off his red cape, and started on his way home. On his way home, he was again forced to survive on the things of nature. This time, however, he seemed to encounter sweet fruits, and even strangers treating him with kindness. As he was no longer wearing the red cape, they seemed to be less intimidated by him. Nature had a lot to offer, a lot, he noticed, if you only know where to look for. He changed from being a sick, pale and weak boy to a person that could walk straight, breathe deep and travel long distances without tiring. Life was coming back into his body and he welcomed it with open arms. By doing what the man had suggested, his mind was clear with what he needed to do, return and correct the wrongs he did. With the power of simplicity and appreciation, and the words he received from the wise man in the cave, he kept on going, although the road home was not always easy. Then finally he entered his own country, but before getting to his parents' home he had to pass close to the swamps. To his surprise, he met the Red Cape. "Hello, Dwerno!" His voice sounded demanding. "It has been a while. You look as if you have been traveling for some time. Take the load off your shoulders, come sit next to me and let's catch up and rekindle our friendship. You look different." In his voice Dwerno could detect a hint of envy and surprise. After finding out that Dwerno had not been able to sell the pearl, he said, "Oh, Dwerno, forget about this pearl. I did not know it would be so hard to sell it. I will change it. I will change the pearl into a real treasure, and you will be the richest man on earth. You know I can do that for you. You are just tired from your travel. Please sit down." The more the Red Cape spoke, the clearer Dwerno's mind came, and he saw through the tricks and promises. The Red Cape had stood up and was now standing with his back towards the swamp, continuing to convince Dwerno. Slowly Dwerno stood up and walked backwards, and suddenly, with all his strength, he swung the pearl in the direction of the Red Cape and yelled, "You can keep this blasted pearl, as far as I'm concerned." The pearl went almost over the Red Cape's head, who reached and reached, caught the pearl but lost his balance, and fell with an evil cry into the swampy lake and was gone forever. Dwerno looked at the spot where he had gone down and said, "I do not need your worthless treasures any more." He felt he was free, and while singing he went to look for his family, who met him with open arms. His father looked at this strong young man and said, "My son, travels have done good to you." "Yes, father, it has opened my eyes and taught me not to look for treasures elsewhere, for they are usually right at home." Dwerno apologized for all the bad things he had caused. They were so happy to see him back and the change that had taken place, they did not think it was necessary to hear any further apologies. He looked around and noticed that his family had tried hard to improve the surroundings, but the next day everything became much easier. Nature started to change and rebalance itself, and the surroundings turned back to what it had been long time ago, back into a beautiful place. The swamps dried out and made place for luscious green clearings. Reptiles were seldom seen after that, and colorful birds started visiting again. The springs, which were once spitting green poisons, were now spouting crystal clear waters again. Dwerno became happy and content, and helped his parents, became friends with everybody again, and lived a long, happy, and content life. What the story could bring us. As this story shows us that we too are chasing after new presents, toys, with the thought that these new things will bring happiness. That is later in life that we think if we have a certain profession, a certain amount of money, are living in a certain neighborhood, house, and own a certain car, that we will be content and happy. But when we cannot be okay with what we have today, or what we had in the past, we will not be able to be happy and content in the future. Man is always looking to find his pearl, his ultimate treasure, the ultimate partner, job, car, country, and all is created with an opposite, and not permanent.